The mist clung to the Scottish Highlands like a ghostly shroud, wrapping the rolling hills in its cool embrace as dawn broke over the medieval landscape of 1270. In a modest stone house near Elderslie, a child's first cry pierced the morning stillness. The newborn, William Wallace, entered a world where the proud Scottish people lived under the growing shadow of English dominion. None could have known then that this child would become the spark that would ignite Scotland's passionate fight for independence. Young William's earliest memories were painted in the rich colours of the Highlands, the deep purple of heather stretching across windswept moors, the emerald green of ancient forests, and the steel grey of storm-laden skies. But these natural splendours were increasingly marred by the harsh realities of English occupation. As a boy, he learned to recognise the ominous thunder of English cavalry before he learned to read, and he grew familiar with the sight of foreign soldiers demanding tribute from his neighbours before he could write his name. His father, a minor nobleman of respected standing, saw in his son's keen eyes and questioning mind the potential for something greater than the life of a subjugated Scotsman. Against the backdrop of increasing English control, he made the difficult decision to send William abroad for education. The journey across the sea marked the beginning of William's transformation from a Highland boy to a learned man of the world. In the quiet halls of European monasteries and schools, William's mind flourished like a wild Scottish flower, transplanted to a carefully tended garden. He absorbed languages with natural ease, delved deep into philosophy, and studied the great military campaigns of history. Yet even as he expanded his horizons among the spires of Paris and the ancient streets of Rome, his heart remained tethered to the misty hills of his homeland. Each letter from home brought news of increasing English oppression, of ancient Scottish customs being stripped away, of proud clan chiefs being humbled before English lords. Throughout his education, William maintained a connection to his roots through the stories and songs that travelled with Scottish merchants and wandering minstrels. These tales of ancient heroes and battles fought for freedom would later inform his understanding of leadership and inspire his own approach to resistance. The blend of formal education and cultural heritage created in him a unique perspective that would prove invaluable in the years to come. When William finally returned to Scotland, he was a man transformed. His tall frame carried the bearing of both scholar and warrior, his eyes holding the wisdom of his studies abroad while maintaining the fierce pride of his Highland heritage. He found his homeland changed as well, the English grip having tightened during his absence. The clan system, once the proud backbone of Scottish society, was being methodically dismantled by English decrees. Ancient traditions were being replaced by foreign customs, and the very language of the Highlands was being pushed to the margins of society. It was during these troubled times that William reconnected with Murren MacLanna. She had been a child when he left, but now she was a woman whose beauty was matched only by her fierce spirit. Their courtship blossomed in secret, conducted in hidden glens and quiet forest clearings, away from the prying eyes of English soldiers who claimed the despicable right of prima nocta, the privilege to bed Scottish brides on their wedding nights. Murren represented everything William loved about Scotland: untamed beauty, unwavering strength, and an indomitable spirit that refused to be broken. Their conversations, filled with shared dreams of freedom and whispered tales of ancient Scottish heroes, became a refuge from the harsh realities of their time. When they married in a secret ceremony, witnessed only by trusted friends and family, William dared to hope that he might find personal happiness despite the troubled state of his nation. Their joy was tragically short-lived. The market day that changed everything began like any other, with vendors calling their wares and children playing between the stalls. When an English soldier attempted to assault Murren, she fought back with the same fierce spirit that had drawn William to her. The couple's escape from the immediate situation proved to be only a temporary reprieve. The following day, while William was away, the English garrison commander ordered Moran's public execution, making her death a brutal demonstration of English authority. The scholar who had dreamed of finding peace in a private life died with Moran. In his place arose a warrior whose grief and rage would reshape the destiny of Scotland. That night, William gathered a small band of trusted men and unleashed his vengeance upon the English garrison. The attack was swift, brutal, and complete. By dawn, the garrison lay in ruins, and William Wallace had taken his first step on a path that would lead him from bereaved husband to legendary freedom fighter. Word of the garrison's destruction spread through the Highlands like wildfire, igniting the long-suppressed flames of rebellion in Scottish hearts. Men began to gather under Wallace's banner, drawn by tales of his courage and tactical brilliance. They came from all walks of life: farmers with pitchforks, craftsmen with hammers, clan warriors with ancient weapons passed down through generations. Each brought their own stories of English oppression, their own reasons for choosing freedom over safety. Local traditions still speak of the nights before battles, when Wallace would walk among his men, listening to their stories and sharing their fears and hopes. His education had taught him strategy and tactics, but it was his deep understanding of the Scottish people that made him a true leader. He knew that each soldier under his command fought not just for abstract principles, but for their families, their traditions, and their way of life. William proved to be a natural leader, combining his educated mind with an instinctive understanding of guerrilla warfare. He trained his growing army in unconventional tactics, teaching them to use Scotland's difficult terrain to their advantage. The steep valleys became ambush points, the thick forests offered cover for surprise attacks, and the treacherous bogs became deadly traps for heavily armoured English cavalry. The Battle of Stirling Bridge in 1297 marked the moment when Wallace's rebellion transformed into a national revolution. With careful planning and brilliant strategy, he turned the narrow bridge into a deadly bottleneck for the superior English forces. As the English knights and men-at-arms crowded onto the wooden structure, Wallace waited until precisely the right moment before giving the signal to attack. The resulting victory sent shockwaves through both Scotland and England, proving that the mighty English army was not invincible. Wallace's elevation to Guardian of Scotland brought new challenges. The political landscape of medieval Scotland was a treacherous maze of competing interests and shifting loyalties. Many nobles, particularly those with lands on both sides of the border, played a dangerous game of appearing to support independence while secretly hedging their bets with England. Wallace, who had started his campaign seeking simple justice, now found himself navigating complex political waters. The Battle of Falkirk in 1298 revealed the cost of these divided loyalties. Despite Wallace's careful planning and tactical innovations, the withdrawal of key noble houses at crucial moments left his army vulnerable to England's superior numbers and heavily armoured cavalry. The defeat was bitter, but it taught Wallace valuable lessons about trust and the true nature of loyalty. In the years that followed, Wallace adapted his strategy. He returned to the guerrilla tactics that had served him well in the early days of the rebellion, striking at English supply lines and isolated garrisons before melting back into the landscape. He also began to build diplomatic connections, reaching out to potential allies on the continent and articulating Scotland's cause in the political arena. His letters to the French court showed that the warrior still possessed the educated mind of his youth, able to argue Scotland's case with both passion and reason. For 7 years, Wallace remained an elusive figure, a shadow that the English could never quite catch. To the common people of Scotland, he became larger than life, a symbol of hope and resistance. Stories of his exploits grew with each telling, some certainly embellished, but all capturing the essential truth of a man who dared to stand against tyranny. His capture in 1305 came through betrayal, orchestrated by Scottish nobles who had been bought with English gold. When he was brought to London in chains, King Edward I intended to make his execution a spectacle that would break the spirit of Scottish resistance once and for all. Instead, Wallace's final days became a testament to the power of unwavering conviction. During his show trial, Wallace remained defiant. When asked to plead for mercy, he instead declared that he could not be a traitor to England because he had never sworn allegiance to its king. His execution was deliberately prolonged and brutal, designed to strike fear into the hearts of any who might consider following his example. Yet even in his final moments, as he faced the most horrific death medieval justice could devise, Wallace's courage never wavered. His last word, freedom, echoed across the gathered crowd and through the centuries that followed. William Wallace's death marked the beginning of his legend rather than its end. His execution, far from crushing the spirit of Scottish independence, became a rallying cry for future generations. Robert the Bruce, who would later secure Scottish independence, drew inspiration from Wallace's example. The Declaration of Arbroath in 1320, Scotland's formal declaration of independence, carried echoes of the principles Wallace had died defending. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of Wallace's legacy lies in the ordinary lives he touched. The countless Scottish families who passed down their own personal connections to the Great Rebellion. In small villages across the Highlands, stories still circulate of great-great-grandparents who fought alongside Wallace, or who sheltered him during his years as a fugitive. These tales, handed down through generations like precious heirlooms, have become part of Scotland's cultural DNA, weaving the historical figure of Wallace into the very fabric of Scottish identity. In the centuries following Wallace's death, his influence would manifest in unexpected ways. During the Scottish Enlightenment of the 18th century, philosophers and scholars drew parallels between Wallace's fight for freedom and their own intellectual battles against dogma and tyranny. His story became a touchstone for discussions about natural rights and the relationship between the individual and the state, influencing political thought far beyond Scotland's borders. The archaeological record, too, continues to yield new insights into Wallace's era. Recent discoveries of medieval weapons caches and battle sites have helped historians piece together a more detailed picture of his military campaigns. Each unearthed artifact, from corroded sword fragments to humble cooking pots, adds texture to our understanding of the daily realities faced by Wallace and his followers, transforming them from legendary figures into real people who ate, slept, fought, and died for their beliefs. The landscape itself bears witness to Wallace's story. The ancient paths he once traversed have become popular hiking trails, allowing modern visitors to literally walk in his footsteps. Standing atop the hills where he once planned his strategies, one can still appreciate the tactical genius that allowed a smaller force to repeatedly outmaneuver their opponents. The very geography of Scotland helps explain how Wallace's guerrilla warfare succeeded. Every glen could hide an army. Every crag could serve as a watchtower. In the realm of art and literature, Wallace's influence has only grown stronger with time. Each generation has reimagined him according to its own ideals and aspirations. Poets, painters, and storytellers have found in his tale an inexhaustible source of inspiration, creating works that range from meticulously researched historical accounts to romantic interpretations that capture the emotional truth, if not always the historical accuracy, of his struggle. The environmental movement of recent decades has added yet another dimension to Wallace's legacy. His deep connection to Scotland's natural landscape resonates with modern efforts to preserve the wild places he once knew. The forests where he found refuge, the glens where he gathered his forces, and the mountains that sheltered his rebellion have become symbols not only of Scottish independence, but of the need to protect these ancient landscapes for future generations. In education, Wallace's story serves as more than just a history lesson. Teachers across Scotland and beyond use his example to explore complex themes of justice, leadership, and moral courage. Students are encouraged to consider the difficult choices he faced, to debate the ethics of resistance versus accommodation, and to examine how individuals can affect change in their own communities. Modern Scottish politics continues to be shaped by Wallace's shadow. His name is invoked in debates about independence and sovereignty, though often with more nuance than in centuries past. His legacy reminds politicians and citizens alike that questions of national identity and self-determination are rarely simple, and that the answers found in one era must sometimes be reconsidered in another. Digital technology has given Wallace's story new life in the 21st century. Virtual reality reconstructions allow people to experience medieval Scotland in unprecedented detail, while social media connects Wallace enthusiasts from around the globe. Online forums buzz with discussions about historical sources, archaeological findings, and the continuing relevance of his struggle for freedom in today's world. Yet perhaps the most profound aspect of Wallace's legacy is how it continues to evolve. Each new generation finds in his story the elements that speak most directly to their own challenges and aspirations. To some, he represents the triumph of principle over power. To others, the importance of cultural identity in an increasingly globalized world. To still others, he exemplifies the ability of one person to catalyze massive social change through unwavering commitment to a cause. In the end, William Wallace's story reminds us that history is not merely a collection of dates and facts, but a living dialogue between past and present. His struggle for freedom, though rooted in medieval Scotland, speaks to universal human desires and challenges that remain relevant today. As long as people somewhere fight for freedom and justice, as long as individuals stand up against overwhelming odds for what they believe in, William Wallace's legacy will continue to inspire and guide future generations.